Paper, yeah. It's our time, one love. So this video is obviously about congestion pricing and how it's changing New York for the better or for the worse. So I'm going to try to get into it. You guys let me know what you think and your thoughts and your experiences, because this is more so a forum for you all to share what your thoughts are. So I've had a lot of posts on Twitter, at Paperboy Prince on Twitter is my Twitter, and that have sparked a lot of conversation about congestion pricing. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a system where it's basically a toll. It's a toll where anywhere under 60th Street in Manhattan, the city of New York will charge you $9 if you're in a car, like a regular car, like I am here. And if you have like a truck, like a business truck, or maybe even like a U-Haul or something like that, I believe it's $24. And if you're in an Uber, so even if you're taking an Uber and you go there, they're gonna add an extra $2 to $3 on your Uber ride. I understand tolls and I get tolls. My issue straight off the bat, my main issue with, well, I'm not gonna say my main issue. A big issue with congestion pricing is there's already a lot of tolls around New York City. So if you're not familiar with New York, there's a bunch of bridges. Because New York is an island, there's a bunch of bridges that connect, parts of New York City and New Jersey to Manhattan. And I do think, well, one thing I'll say is this. There's obviously public transportation in Manhattan, and congestion pricing is proposed to be a toll that will help to fund the MTA, which is the public transportation in New York. But a lot of people believe, based on seeing how the MTA already operates, a lot of people believe that, hey, is this money actually going to go to improve the MTA? And they'll say, well, yeah, it has to. But if it is going to improve the MTA, is it going to make the improvements that I myself as a rider, and not me, but literally this is what riders are saying, is it going to improve the MTA in a way that I myself as a rider will benefit? And I see a lot of people speaking on congestion pricing, at least on social media, that live in other cities or live in other parts of the country, and they have this idea of New York of, you guys have public transportation system that's so great and you can use it, and the MTA is great. I love the MTA. I have a lot of fun on it. It's also a way to get around, so it's cool. But there's a lot of shortcomings that folks don't realize. A lot of shortcomings. And a lot of times where it's not running well, and if that is your primary source of transportation, you could be in for a rude awakening if you're trying to travel at certain times, or if you're trying to carry things, if you have kids, if you have a disability. There's a lot of issues there. That's one part. The second part is a lot of the upgrades to the MTA are happening in areas that are already the most affluent areas that usually have good MTA service already. So a lot of the planned upgrades for the MTA are happening in areas where, okay, it costs $5,000 a month to even get an apartment there. These people are already doing well. Whereas parts of Brooklyn, parts deeper in Queens, where they could use entire subway stations there, where they could help to revitalize subway stations there, where they could use more frequent trains, where we could even have a line that helps to connect Brooklyn, North Brooklyn and South Brooklyn. There are no plans for this at all, right? And if there are ideas or plans for it, they're so far in the back burner that by the time that happens, you will likely be old and gray. I'm just being real here. So folks are saying, okay, now we are sacrificing our ability to move a little cheaper with the congestion pricing tax. We're sacrificing that and saying, okay, now we're only going to use public transportation. Another thing that's tough about public transportation, a lot of the New York City subway stations are outside. I think that's a cool feature. You get to see outside, you get to be out. But the tough part about it is it's cold 6 months out of the year, 5 to 6 months out of the year. It is freezing cold in New York City. Right now, it is 28 degrees. Okay? Right now, it's 28 degrees outside. If I showed you, it's ice and snow. If you have to be outside in that, they want people to bike. They're doing all these bike lanes. You want people to bike in that. I just saw a stat about how little city bikes are used and how how there isn't a lot of use of city bikes. Listen, one of my favorite places. So that's another issue with congestion pricing, is the upgrades not necessarily happening in areas that need it the most, based on the riders that could use it the most. Another thing is basically just a broke boy tax, right? It's a broke boy tax to where if you make a bunch of money, $9 a day might not be a lot to you. But if you're struggling to make ends meet, if you're spending over 60% of your income just on rent alone, and you have a car because you want to pick up your kids, or you have people to take to healthcare appointments, or you're like me, I run a mutual aid organization as well as have a business. So sometimes it's just easier for me to use my car to drop off food or pick up coats we're giving back, or laptops. Instead of carrying a bunch of laptops on the train, I put it in my car, books, stuff like that. That's one of the main reasons that I have a car, is because, well, when I do go in the city and move around, I have a mutual aid group, which we're giving back to people in public housing and less fortunate. But this tax, right? If I go back and forth every day, we're looking at $300, $400, $500 a month. That tax cuts into that charity work, that mutual aid that we're doing so much that it makes it almost not worth it, unless we have to fundraise that much more just for tolls, not including the fundraising that we're doing just to keep it going, right? And then we also have a bus. I have a bus and a truck that we use, and that we would go in the city and drop stuff off and do all of that. But now it's less advantageous to do that because of the cost associated with it. And it makes it that much harder where, for a mutual aid group, an extra $400 a month, that is a make or break thing. And where you have to close stuff down, and even saying, oh, you could fundraise, but the time spent fundraising takes away from the time doing the work. And then it just makes stuff more difficult. It also comes at a time where the cost of living is rising. New York City has a higher cost of living than most places in the world, and most places in New York State, and of course, most places in America as well. So it's already a high cost of living place. And I feel like the city should be looking at ways to reduce the cost of living, and doing something like adding this on with congestion pricing. If, again, I think if it was a lower price, right? If it was $3, $4 or something like that, that's understandable. $9 is a lot. $9 is a lot. And it was supposed to be $15. But $9 is a lot of money to charge people every day to come to Manhattan. Anything you want to do in Manhattan, outside of sit in a park, it is expensive. There's a cost associated with that. A bottle of water is $4 or $5. Getting a drink at a venue can be anywhere from $13 to $25, $30 for one drink. So, And obviously food and meals and dinners and all of that are expensive in Manhattan. So yeah, I don't think that it is a very knowledgeable way of handling this problem. Another thing is because it didn't reduce traffic that much. Right now it's cold outside, and I just drove in Manhattan, and the traffic, it might have taken 5 minutes off of your time, which honestly is something. But is $9 worth 5 minutes? I don't think it's worth it. I don't think the $9 is worth 5 minutes. And then they say, okay, so then don't come or take the train. Well, if you stop 8% of people, say it's only 8% of people visiting that come in through that way. If those people stop coming into Manhattan, that is a drop off for a lot of businesses. And that drop off for businesses ends up being a drop off in tax revenue. And then, so it's like a catch-22, because yeah, maybe you've gained tax revenue from the congestion pricing, but then you lose tax revenue from the sales tax and from all of these different ways that people would come in the city. New York City is already, in my opinion, as far as the brick and mortar and streets and having that liveliness, it is not the same. And I feel like it is dying in a lot of ways. People don't realize it, but if you have been here and on the streets and just looking for the last 8 or 9 years, there's a drastic change. There's more. I have a commercial lease, so I look out for leases and businesses that are open. There's more for sale, for lease signs than I've ever seen before in big areas, in flagship areas. And that is a trickle down issue. If some of the biggest areas in Manhattan where the flagship businesses would be aren't there, that affects so many other businesses. And it's basically telling about the problems that are going to come and going to trickle down. And COVID, like, we're still seeing businesses that are dying off from COVID, that they're still trying to get back, and maybe they were able to rob Peter to pay Paul for a little bit, but it's catching up to them. Or trends have changed. Folks have moved away. Folks who maybe have supported certain businesses have moved away. New people have came in the city, and they're just like, Amazon, Seamless or whatever. They're not going to operate in the same way that New Yorkers of before did. So yeah, now I'll say this. One of my favorite places in the world is Amsterdam. I love Amsterdam, the architecture, the culture, the history. Obviously the history isn't perfect, but there's a lot of cool things there. The museums, the leisure activities, all of that. Also, their transportation. They have a really interesting transportation system where, because the country is so old, they have canal systems with water going through and people on boats. You'll see people living on boats and taking boats to get places. They have trams that go through the city. They also have a metro line that goes under the city. Subway, whatever you want to call it. They also have people in cars, and then bikes as well that are really well regulated. You'll see giant parking lots with bikes in them, like how in America we'll have with cars. You'll see giant parking lots with bikes. The bikes stop at lights and they respect the red light. They'll wait, they'll let the cars go, the bikes go. It's very organized and put in well. You can get hit by a bike there. I remember my first time there, I was walking, I was like, oh, this is a bike lane, it's not a big deal. And it was like, all right, I got hit by a bike. But it's very serious and regulated there. It's also a cold place a lot of the year, and people still are able to ride bikes and use the boats and all these things. People look healthy there because of that. You'll see older people riding a bike. Why am I talking about this? I think New York City wants to get there. Also, if you remember, New York City was originally called New Amsterdam, and a lot of the places here, Harlem, which comes from Haarlem in the Netherlands, and Brooklyn, that comes from Brooklyn in the Netherlands. So there's a lot of synergy there. This was a Dutch territory at one point. There is a possibility for New York to get that going. Having all of these things happening. But the difference is we're in America, and we decided to make this a car country. I did not agree with it. I love walkable cities. It's one of the reasons I live in New York. But it was decided to make this more of a car country. If we're going to change that, we have to be really serious about it. And I feel like the congestion pricing is just a half method of doing it. And they knew it was unpopular. They knew it was unpopular because it was supposed to take place in 2024. It was supposed to start in June 2024, months before the presidential election. And there was also some city and state elections happening. State elections and federal elections. So because the Democrats didn't want to lose Kathy Hochul, our governor, she actually moved congestion pricing after the election. She decided to restart it after the election so that it wouldn't affect Democrats running for office in New York. Do you see the issue here? They deliberately tried to place something after the one time you get to vote every 4 years or 2 years. They deliberately started it after then because they knew that if they started it before then, many folks would be voted out based on their anger lingering over from the recent start of congestion pricing. And then they said, oh, we've listened and we've seen that, cost of living increases, so we decided to pause it. And okay. I support public transit. And the thing that I hate the most about opposing congestion pricing is that people come out like you don't support public transit, like you don't support the wanting to fund public transit and do more for that. But you got to look at, my issue is, okay, look at how the MTA has moved so far. Look at how little updates and upgrades they've made for ADA and disability folks all this time. And now that they have congestion pricing, they said that's the first thing you're supposed to do, when you're all supposed to do that 20 years ago. Look at the board of the MTA and how it looks. I'm not going to talk about the gender or race of the people of the board or the how affluent they are, but I'll say that they're disconnected with, to me, they seem disconnected with the average rider of the MTA. So those are some of my main thoughts. Let me see if there was anything else that I wanted to get at that I did not. But yeah, I think, here's the other thing. Obviously, there's a lot of issues and crime and stuff on the train. Most of the time, you'll be fine. Honestly, I think some of it is blown out of proportion, but there are real crime things that are happening every week. And that is a scary thing for some people. I know for some women, hey, you would want to drive. Now they're charging you $9 to drive in the city at night. If you're going out at night and you're a young woman and you're maybe wearing something with less clothes or a bunch of clothes and you don't feel comfortable, because sometimes you'll be the only one in a train. Most of the time you'll be fine, but maybe you just don't feel comfortable, so that's why you want to take the car. I get that. I totally get that, and I see that all the time. Okay, so I think that's most of it. I think that's most of it. Let me see what's something I got. Yeah, so I also think we're trying to reestablish, this will be my last thought. We're trying to reestablish getting New York City booming. It's not back booming. People are lying and think it's not back booming. We're trying to reestablish that, and I think the congestion pricing is one thing that slows that up. It makes it harder for people to want to go to the city. So, but you guys let me know what you think. Okay, do you think it's a good idea, a bad idea? Why? I know that folks say, well, most of the folks commute using the train. That's true. That is true. But then the question is, should you propose a tax that disproportionately affects low-income people? You say, oh, the low-income people come cars. First of all, that's classist to say. And second of all, there's a lot of low-income people that own cars and use cars, and the tracking on this stuff isn't great, but there's a lot. So I'm gonna do another video talking about how many people in New York sleep in their car. There's a ton of people that live in their car, sleep in their car. They don't promote it or let you know or show it, or it might not be obvious to you, but I know because I walk the streets and I walk my dog late at night and I see all these things. It's a lot, and I have friends who've done it before, so we'll talk about it. But there's a ton of low-income people that use cars, that live in their cars. That's another reason why I think this tax is happening, because they see that as another way to deal with that. So, okay, I want to know what you guys think. I know you guys think. I'm gonna be making more videos about a bunch of stuff. So paper, yeah.